Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vistaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nivasisha Sunyavari Pashtutana Satarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare. So as usual, we are recording these. So if you do happen to miss this session and you would like to catch up, it's available there on the YouTube channel there. So normally I put it up the next morning, like today's recording, I will put up tomorrow morning. So they're available if you want. Okay, so you've got your Bhagavad Gita's there. So we are on text 63. Is that correct?
Text 64, I think that I'm at the red text 63.
64. No, you're correct. Yeah. Oh no, 60. Yeah, 63 we did definitely, because there's this verse from Rupa Goswami describing Yukta Vairagya, using the objects and things in this world in the Lord's service. So 64. And Mother Gaia had her hand up first. So just before we begin, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So coming to the end of chapter 2. So you can recite Mother Gaia 64 along with the translation and relatively short purport.
1 second, unmuting. 64 is here. Okay. Ragadvesha vimuktistu vishayan indriyaishcharan atma vashyar vidyatma prasadam adhikachati. Translation. But a person free from all attachment and aversion and able to control his senses through regulative principles of freedom can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord. Purport. It is already explained that one may externally control the senses by some artificial process, but unless the senses are engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord, there is every chance of a fall. Although the person in full Krishna consciousness may apparently be on the sensual plane, because of his being Krishna conscious, he has no attachment to sensual activities. The Krishna conscious person is concerned only with the satisfaction of Krishna and nothing else. Therefore, he is transcendental to all attachment and detachment. If Krishna wants, the devotee can do anything which is ordinarily undesirable. And if Krishna does not want, he shall not do that which he would have ordinarily done for his own satisfaction. Therefore, to act or not to act is within his control because he acts only under the direction of Krishna. This consciousness is the causeless mercy of the Lord, which the devotee can achieve in spite of his being attached to the sensual platform.
Okay, thank you. So the word is used here. I remember this, the last line of this verse. Prashadam adhikachite. So prashadam, as we know, it means what we eat. No, actually, prashadam means mercy. So one gains the complete mercy of the Lord. So that's what comes from following the regulative principles under the direction of Krishna. So we could say regulative principles of controlling the senses is Vaidhi Bhakti. Yeah. Now from that, one obtains the complete mercy of the Lord. Yeah. In other words, one moves from a Vaidhi Bhakti to complete mercy of the Lord. We can say one enters into a spontaneous relationship with Krishna. So interesting, this verse describes this progress, the progressive nature of Krishna consciousness. Sorry, my voice is a bit weak today. So any other questions or comments on this? This what comes to mind immediately upon reading this.
Yeah, I wanted a bit of explanation on this one, if it's okay.
Yeah.
I
What?
can
what
read it. I read it, and then you can. If Krishna wants, the devotee can do anything which is ordinary, undesirable. And if Krishna does not want, he shall not do that which he would have ordinarily done for his own satisfaction. So, kind of a little example, or
Yeah, well, I think a Prabhupada here is we can get a clear example of this in the Bhagavad Gita itself, where Arjuna doesn't want to engage in a warfare. So I should think Prabhupada is directly speaking about Arjuna as an example here. Yeah, so in other words, in the beginning, Arjuna was not inclined to do what Krishna wanted. But by hearing from Krishna, then although he didn't want to, he became agreeable. So in other words, instead of following what he considered to be good or bad, he gave that up and acted according to the direction of Krishna. So for the example of Arjuna, it's quite dramatic because Arjuna had, I could say, all good reason from his point of view of not fighting. Even he was quoting Dharma Sastra, reasons for not fighting. But as we know, Krishna had other plans and other ideas. But Arjuna gave that up upon hearing from Krishna. So that's a good, so I would say that's an example there. So, and by acting according to Krishna's direction, one is automatically above, one is transcendental, as described here, to attachment to the result. And also, so it's free from attachment and detachment.
yeah.
That was following Krishna. Yeah, so it's an interesting sentence. If Krishna wants, the devotee can do anything.
I was trying to put it in, like I understood as Arjun's thing, but I was trying to put it as an example for us as everyday kind of
Yeah,
example.
well, other example you could use is that I guess devotees learn to develop a taste and a liking for it. But I remember when I was first kind of told or instructed to go on book distribution, and the last thing I wanted to do was go on the street and try and stop someone.
Yeah,
I just didn't want to do it. I can remember being taken to the spot. We was driving in a car, and I had butterflies in my stomach. I was so nervous at the thought of having to stop someone on the street and actually speak to them. I'd never done that type of thing before. But by the mercy and inspiration of devotees, I actually did it. And so there may be many things like that that we wouldn't ordinarily choose to do, but then we take it up because we know it's going to be pleasing to the spiritual master or going to be pleasing to Krishna. So that's a selfless act. Yeah. Like for instance, waking up at 4:00 in the morning. It's not exactly what a lot of people might be inclined to do, or 5:00 in the morning. Remember, Abhimanyu Prabhu, one godbrother of mine, he was staying with us one time, and he was jokingly said, you know, waking up at this godforsaken hour. He was kind of expressing the materialistic, notion of waking up at that time in the morning. I remember when my mother and sister came to visit me at the temple, and I told them what time I wake up in the morning. They couldn't believe it. They couldn't get their heads around it. And we may not be immediately agreeable to do that. But we do it because we understand it's good for us. It's Brahma Muhurta. Yeah. And so, or whatever it may be, you may not wake up there at home at that time, but you wake up early so you can do some puja and chant the holy name of the Lord. So it's not very pleasing. It may not be in the beginning stages, but then after some time, one gets habituated and one develops a liking for it. Yeah. So
Yeah, I think what happens is like you get into that system, so the body is built like that. It just wakes up 3:30, 4 o'clock. It just gets up, even
Yeah.
if it's bed late, it still wakes up at that time. I think,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
do with another half an hour. You won't sleep. You'll be up because you think, oh, I could do quite a few runs before Mangalarti, you know.
Yeah, it becomes a
Yeah.
natural. After some time, one becomes accustomed to it. Yeah, I've done that many times. Sometimes I'm determined not to go to Mongolardi. Determined, because I'm so tired. But then next day, ding, I wake up.
I do the
Actually, to be truthful, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm very, very, very tired, and I may be a little bit late. But in general, so yeah, so there's many other examples we can give. So there's two. Yeah, does not. Let's read it again.
really good sentence.
Yeah, he shall not do that which he would have ordinarily done for his own satisfaction. For instance, one may have in the past developed attachment to watching Bollywood films or eating here and eating there. But then we understand that's not good for our spiritual development. So then we give that up. Yeah. Yama and niyama, accepting things we take up and things we avoid. And that's the way to get the prashadam adhigachati, which is the complete mercy of the Lord. Yeah. Raga dvesha vimuktastu visha and indriyeshchana atma visheva deyatma prashadam adhigachati. Yeah. Any other questions or comments on this? Let me just look at the surrender unto me. Any further comments? Not much here. It says here, with a controlled mind and fixed intelligence, a man in transcendence remains disinterested in combining the senses with their objects. Everything such a great soul does is auspicious, and he experiences full satisfaction. Yeah. And the next verse gives a further consequence of this prashadam adhigachati. Yeah. Prashadam, it begins again. Prashadi savadukkanam, achievement of the causeless mercy of the Lord. So I see some more hands there. Mother Rajkishore, you'd like to read the next verse?
Okay, Hare Krishna. Prasade sarva dukkhanam hanirsayopajayate prasanna chetasu hiyanshu buddhi paryavatishtate. Translation. For one thus satisfied in Krishna consciousness, the threefold miseries of material existence exist no longer. In such satisfied consciousness, one's intelligence is soon well established. Thank you.
Is there purple there?
No.
No.
There's no purple here. Let's just read the commentary here. I'll just read this commentary. A soul connected to Krishna through Krishna consciousness is free from material attractions and aversions and is fully satisfied. He experiences no misery for his intelligence being well established. So yeah, well established intelligence is fixed on Krishna. Without bhakti, regardless of what one possesses or what one does, no one is satisfied. As you see in the example of Sri Vyasadev's lamentation in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Vyasadeva had compiled the Vedas, added the Puranas, and composed the Mahabharata. Yet because he had not emphasized bhakti, he remained dissatisfied in mind. he reflected, I have, under strict disciplinary vows, unpretentiously worshipped the Vedas, the spiritual master, and the altar of sacrifice. I have abided by the rulings and have shown the import of disciplic succession through the explanation of the Mahabharata, by which even women, sudras, and others, friends of the thrice-born, can see the path of religion. I am feeling incomplete, although I myself am fully equipped with everything required by the Vedas. This may be because I did not specifically point out the devotional service of the Lord, which is dear both to perfect beings and the infallible Lord. Yeah, so Burujam Prabhu gives an example there of Srila Vyasadev's dissatisfaction. Yeah. Would you like to read the next verse, Maharaj Kishore? Because it has a purple there. You can read next one.
Okay. Nasti buddhir yuktasya na cha yuktasya bhavana na cha bhavayata shantir asantasya krutah sukham. Translation: one who is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace? Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Unless one is in Krishna consciousness, there is no possibility of peace. So it is confirmed in the 5th chapter, 5.29, that when one understands that Krishna is the only enjoyer of all the good results of sacrifice and penance, that he is the proprietor of all universal manifestations, and that he is the real friend of all living entities, then only can one have real peace. Therefore, if one is not in Krishna consciousness, there cannot be a final goal for the mind. Disturbance is due to want of an ultimate goal. And when one is certain that Krishna is the enjoyer, proprietor, and friend of everyone and everything, then one can, with a steady mind, bring about peace. Therefore, one who is engaged without a relationship with Krishna is certainly always in distress and is without peace. However, much he may make a show of peace and spiritual advancement in life, Krishna consciousness is a self-manifested peaceful condition which can be achieved only in relationship with Krishna.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so Prabhupada's quoting Bhakta-yam yakatapasam savaloka maheshwaram suradim savabhutanam kanatvam samtim vichati. So Prabhupada would often quote this verse, actually. It seems like Prabhupada had special inspiration from this verse, 529, and he gives the ingredients here, which leads to complete peace. So let's just go there. 529. So one understands that Krishna is the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and activities. Well, it's quite a lengthy purport. We won't read the purport, but that Krishna is the proprietor of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher. So Krishna wishes especially his devotees well. So Krishna is on your side. Krishna is on our side. Yeah. Krishna is there to protect us. Krishna is there to guide us. So that leads to peace. Yeah. Peace from the pangs of material miseries. So one who's fully conscious of Krishna being the proprietor of everything and the friend. That leads to peace. Yeah, so let's just the verse again. I learned this small set of verses, but I need to go over them again. But I was having a good time learning these verses and meditating upon them. So, in other words, one whose senses is not focused on Krishna cannot have peace. Yeah. And if there's no peace, how can there be any happiness? Yeah. There may be a false display or false showing of so-called happiness. But if one's senses or one's life is not focused on Krishna, there is no possibility of being actually happy. Yeah. There's no possibility of being peaceful and actually happy in the real sense of the term. Yeah, and this last sentence here, Krishna consciousness is a self-manifested peaceful condition which can only be achieved in relationship to Krishna. Yeah, another nice sentence, self-manifested. Any other questions or comments on this? Okay, so the next verse is, we see in these series of verses, Krishna is oscillating back and forth between the result of controlling one's senses, but then he gives warnings as well as to the results of not controlling one's senses and how the senses can be deviated unless one is very careful. And we've already mentioned that yesterday there was a verse we read. Let's just go back. Yeah, those set of verses. Dayato Vishaya Pumsam Sangasche Shubhajayate Sangatshajayate Kama Kama Krodha Bhujayate Krodha Bhavati Samohai. You know those two verses? The process of becoming attached, becoming angry, losing one's intelligence, and then falling down. Then Krishna speaks in a positive way about the results of meditating upon him. So then the next verse is going to remind us again. Yeah, it's a nice example given next as well. So who's got the hand up there? We have Mother Sahachari. You can read text 67.
Thank you. Indriyanam hi charitam yan mano nividyate tad asya harati pragnam vayur navam ivam phasi. As a strong wind sweeps away a boat on the water, even one of the roaming senses on which the mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence. Purport: unless all of the senses are engaged in the service of the Lord, even one of them engaged in sense gratification can deviate the devotee from the path of transcendental advancement. As mentioned in the life of Maharaj Ambarish, all of the senses must be engaged in Krishna consciousness, for that is the correct technique for controlling the mind.
Okay. Vayo Navam Ivambasi. So nice example giving here, isn't it? A strong wind sweeps away a boat on the water. So even one of the roaming senses in which a mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence. Let's just look here, a little one sentence commentary further. A mind surrendered to the urges of the senses carries away a man's discrimination. His intelligence will thus be stolen by the unfavorable winds of his uncontrolled senses. The senses, however, once subdued, create favorable breezes. Any questions or insights into this? Anyone would like to ask or share?
I was waiting for mind to be connected to the senses,
Waiting for?
Mind connected to the senses, how the senses, how the mind would work with sense gratification.
I didn't quite catch it. What is that, a question or a comment? Or
No, I was commenting, I suppose, waiting for Prabhupada to come up to connecting the mind with the senses, how one of the senses, how the mind would be focused on it.
okay, yeah. Well, the next verse describes that actually.
Oh, yeah.
Therefore, Almighty on the one whose senses are restrained from their objects is certainly of steady intelligence. Yeah. So this is the internal work that we have to do as sadhakas. You know, we have to work hard, and especially in the beginning stages, we have to, you know, we're following the regulative principles, and we want to try and engage all our senses in Krishna's service to get to prasadam adhikachati, the complete mercy of the Lord.
But what about, like some children are forced to eat meat. They don't want to eat, but they're forced to eat meat. Some people are forced to watch a movie because the members of the family want to watch. So there's no choice. Forcefully their senses are taken away. How do they come back on the track?
Well, it's an unfortunate situation, and even though they're unwilling, even though they may be unwilling, it will, in other words, even though they're unwilling, just being exposed to that, it's going to have its effect. So it's going to take some time to overcome that. I guess you're speaking about a specific situation. I mean, I can't imagine devotees being forced to eat meat.
No, in the temple, I think once I was in the class and one of the ladies, she said, don't listen to this man. He's a drug trafficker or women trafficker or something. And he's got about 5 prostitutes working for him. None of them wanted it, but they were forced. He will force you into this.
Anyway.
So I thought, what do they do if they are forced into something like that?
Yeah, I guess it depends on the specific situation. Now, again, in specific situation, if there is such a situation where someone may be circumstantially unable to practice Krishna consciousness and be, for instance, forced to be exposed to, for instance, watching, mundane things and films, etc., then Krishna's within the heart, and if Krishna's within the heart, and he's going to protect the devotee. Yeah. So other than that, anyone else like to comment on that?
Can I ask something, Hare Krishna? What about when one of the members of the family, they are eating beef, and you are like somehow part of that, and you don't want to really be exposed to those things, but you are part of the family?
What to do? Unfortunately,
is that part of the karma? Is this something what we need to reflect, or I have to reflect inside my heart and be merciful and try to understand them, or we should act and try to make them aware of what they are doing?
No, let's look at the example of Prabhupada. When he first came to America, then he was staying with the Agarwals, I think, and they had, next to his ingredients in the fridge was meat. So Prabhupada was living. They were hospitable and they were pious, but they were, eating meat. So Prabhupada, he didn't complain. He didn't try to preach to them. He played the role of the guest. So, especially with family members, probably it will cause too much disturbance for them, and consequently you. If you go on a campaign, for instance, to convince your mother or everyone else that what they're doing is going to send them to hell, that might not create a very good situation for you. Now, obviously, if there is some scope, if the family members are a little bit open to the idea of vegetarianism, then you may explain the principles and the benefits of it. Other than that, you just have to tolerate. What can be done if you're unable to change your situation, i.e., move to another place and not be in their association? You know, you're kind of dependent in that situation. Then you've got to be very intelligent of how you go about. For instance, when I think I said before, I had the experience when my mother was leaving this world, then I was staying with her sisters and her mother. She had 5 sisters and her mother, and none of them were vegetarians, you know. And what would have, you know, if I had started to preach or to make issues of what they was eating, that would have created a very, very, very awkward and very awkward situation, which would have disturbed me as well. I was just there as a guest. I can remember I have one graphic where I went into the kitchen and my mother, she was remarried, so it was you know, my stepfather, however you call it, and he was in the kitchen and he had this wooden hammer and he was beating this piece of steak. That's apparently what they do. They get this wooden hammer and they smash on it with a bit of, you know, this steak. And for me, it was like watching a caveman, a barbarian. It was so graphic. It's like watching someone from the, you know, from prehistoric times, you know, completely unaware. But, you know, I'm not going to, you know, I didn't mention the thing. I just walked in. I felt like internally, I felt horrified and disgusted. But, you know, I didn't, you know, after he cooked and I cooked and I offered my things and I rang the bell and they looked at, you know. So we have to be intelligent of how we maneuver and how we, of how we maneuver and how we exist in this world. Many devotees, or some of you might be forcibly living in association of persons who are not so favorable to Krishna consciousness. There may be, so we have to tolerate. Now, if they try and force us to eat such things, that's the time to pack your bags and move on. That's the time not to tolerate. You know, you're not going to, if they're going to try and impede upon your values, for instance, then that's the time to perhaps move out, move on, you know, rather than be there. Any other questions on that? Did that answer the question, Madhu Mongol Prabhu?
Can I add something?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, please.
Sorry, Prabhu. You know what is it? If we practice Krishna consciousness, humility, we should accept ourselves as a servants instead of controllers. That attitude that I can say I can change people, even we cannot change people. We cannot give Krishna consciousness. We cannot change our life. We cannot change our body. So we cannot insist on anything, controlling other people to eat or not to eat. You know, if we're a servant, that's okay. It doesn't matter whatever these people eat or whatever they do. I'm in position to serve. How can I serve you? Shall I serve you prasadam or anything, you know? But when we take, because
Yeah.
Western psychology, Western thinking, it's damaging thinking. It's very difficult to develop Vaishnava qualities, position and everything. So in that case, whatever happens, we immediately take position as controller instead of surrender. Just surrender. Because that we don't know, you know, to be honest, when I came to London, the most how to say humility, I learned humility and positive vibes from non-devotees, from Muslims and English meat eaters. They taught me such a humility. They served me, they saw me, and they were so they were so humble that I wanted to be more humble. And you know, I was working as a cleaner. Can you imagine working as a cleaner to meat eaters, Jewish family? And you know what she was doing whilst I was cleaning? She was laying the table for me, 25 cheeses, grapes in the middle. She made feast every week. I was coming every day. She was making, because she knew that I'm vegetarian, and she was making table. And when she came to me and said, tea time, she laid table, beautiful table for me. And she was sitting and she fell asleep. And I was sitting, and you know, I was sick. I said, sorry, I can't eat so much. No, eat all week. I was looking for cheese for food. I had to eat, but I was sick. And Abba, you know, this is our position to be servant, not dictate our condition. We're not better than meat eaters. Well, no. And what's more, some people, according to their astrology or previous karma, they cannot be vegetarian with life. They can't. They can't stop drinking. They can't stop smoke. They just can't. It depends on them. Only by mercy, by serving them, they can change by karma. If we serve them, if we give our blessings by devotees, by mercy of devotees, we can change by karma. But we can't it can't be prejudice for anyone eating or whatever doing. We're doing by karma because we came to this life not to enjoy, but to pay our debts. To pay our debts, husband, wife, whatever, people around, you know. So in that case, whatever we do, they do, yeah. So that's it. We bhakti, what is it bhakti? To give love. We should not discriminate that this person eats meat, I stop loving him. No. We don't know. We don't know who this person is. Maybe he comes in Krishna consciousness in a couple of days and he will rise up so that I couldn't reach within 20 years. We don't know. We don't know what's behind it. So it shouldn't be any discrimination at all, but our position as servant, how can I serve you?
Very interesting point you bring up, Mother Jambavati. And if I can just summarize it, it kind of reminds me again of Prabhupada when he was living with the Agarwals in the beginning. He was very friendly, very pleasant, and he charmed them. He very much charmed them, and they became very much attracted to him and his qualities. So Mother Jambavati is bringing up a very interesting and valuable point here. That, for instance, Mother Mangopa, in your original question, perhaps another motive or another way to go about living in that situation is to exactly that, see oneself as a servant. Of course, you're not going to serve them by buying meat and things like that, but be there to help them, be there perhaps, you know, in that mood, and not thinking oneself superior. Yeah, thank you, Mother Jambavati. Very valuable point, you know.
Thank you, you're welcome.
Yes. Any further comments on that?
Like, I was thinking the same thing, you know, when people, we were talking about yesterday, how people commit offenses or like they go to prison and things like that. It's the same thing, like in this life, they're getting the karma of whatever lives they've done, and you can't change them, you know, like criminals or whatever. You can't change them, but you can sympathize and pray for them, give them prasad, things like that, you know.
Yeah, what's it say? Way to a man's heart is through the stomach or something like that?
That's me. That's me saying way to a man's heart is through his stomach.
So,
Feeding.
yeah, I think again, Mother Jambavati is bringing up a really interesting point that this point of a Vaishnava is
Compassion.
compassion and humility. Even if they're in compromised situations, they are still very respectful. Yeah, and very humble and very respectful. So therefore, they're not going to, if the person's not willing or they do not have an ear for Krishna consciousness, it doesn't mean we're not respectful and we don't respect, you know, we should respect their space, respect their situation. We may not share their values. We definitely may not share their diet and values, but that in itself is preaching. You understand? Like I think I mentioned before, Francis of Assisi he said one should preach, 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 and every now and again say a few words. You understand that?
Mm.
In other words, you preach by your example.
By your example.
Preach by your you preach by your example. You preach by your example of humility and respect. But we stand up for our own values, and we do not compromise them. And that in itself can have quite a powerful effect on those around us. You know? So yeah, thank you.
You know what I do about distribution prasad? Like say when I go to Leicester, the Indian sweets I make for Rajbhog, I collect them two at a time. So when I go to my mum's, there's few old ladies, they meet up together. So I give them prasad like that. I just take those Indian sweets and I know they will like that. So they get prasad like that.
Please let me know when you are coming, mother, too. Please let me know when you are coming. I can dress an old lady too.
My mother's group, and I do that to my brother as well. He won't have prasad as prasad, right? So whenever I make pizzas, lasagnas, I freeze them. Then when I go to Leicester, I will give you, oh, look, I made this for you. And he's eating prasad. He doesn't know. You know, that's only way you have to work around people. You know, this person's not going to, if I say this is prasad, eat it. No, this is lasagna, pizza, eat it. You know, you will eat it. You have to really be thoughtful how you give things to.
Yeah. So thank you. I think Mother Mongopu, you've got a really elaborate answer to your question there, coming from different perspectives.
No, it's very painful when you see like people, I don't know, you understand them and you feel the pain knowing that you know a little bit more. That's very painful when you see them eating certain things. I think that's the more painful part.
Yeah, but what can be done? You know, you can only but pray for their well-being, pray that they come, you know, that eventually at some point they come to the correct understanding. And you're on the lookout. You're on the lookout for chances that you might get to explain things. For instance, if you're a vegetarian, then no doubt at some point they may be curious about why you're a vegetarian. And you have to be tactful of how you explain that. For instance, you're not going to explain, well, I'm a vegetarian because if I eat like you do, then I'm going to go to hell. You may not explain it like that, but you explain it in such a way that it seems like a good thing to do. You know?
And also very new age, you can explain them. But meat, it has a lower vibration.
Yeah.
Where vegetables, they have a lot of prana, lots of more high vibration. So then they might understand a little bit, but
yeah, so like say for example, so you're living in that situation, you're seeing what they're eating, it gives you pain, it's difficult. So then you can be, you know, enjoying some conversation that may come up. They may ask or be curious about your diet. So you may be able to explain things to help them to see and understand a bit more. Yes, the great art of practicing Krishna consciousness in the material world, surrounded by materialistic people. It's a great art.
It can also go with devotees, different classes of devotees. Some devotees would go to a pizza place and they'll say, oh, they do make vegetarian pizzas. They don't see where the fork is coming from, how their hands are. They might change their gloves or whatever, but with whatever goes in it. So it depends on even devotees as well. You feel sorry that and that person is eating in a group, and then they will say, oh, I'll have this roll or this pizza or this, and there's meat one side when it's veg. Oh, but that's vegetarian. So you feel sorry for that person who is already in Krishna conscious, but they're not thinking that way. We can't do it.
That's the whole subject. There's a wide variety.
They grow themselves. you know.
Yeah, in our devotee community, we
Yeah,
say
in the
well, there's a
devotee
wide
community.
variety of different standards that devotees may live by, regards eating, etc., etc. But again, we can employ what Mother Jambavati was bringing out. Not that we should play the humble role. Not trying to unless
Yeah.
that's unless they're particularly under our guidance. They're actually, we're actually acting as guides for those people. Then we might, give them some instruction on how to come to a higher standards. But
But
anyway,
we should compromise, isn't it? We should never compromise. And we should keep the standards which we learn instead of just let's make it maybe okay, we can do it today.
yeah,
I don't think that compromise, because then we actually changing everything what actually we've been taught and what is
yeah.
correct.
So we should, and that might be challenged. You may have your certain standards that you live by as a devotee, certain things you eat, certain things you don't eat. And then you find yourself with a group of devotees or two devotees who have other standards, and then, you will be challenged, so it's good to stick to your specific standards. Anyway, should we edge on to another verse? In a good question, interesting points we brought up there. Hope it's of interest to those listening as well, who's with us today. Many of you are out there in the world, probably living with some of you non-devotees and interact with non-devotee family members, etc. But let's read text 69. Is that correct? So, Anupama, you like to read 69?
68 Prabhu.
68, excuse me.
Yeah, Hare Krishna.
68, yeah.
Yeah, 68. Tasmad yasya mahabaho nigrihanti sarvasha indriya se basya tasya prajna pratishtita. Therefore, almighty armed, or one whose senses are restrained from the objects is certainly of steady intelligence. One can curb the forces of sense gratification only by means of Krishna consciousness or engaging all the senses in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. As enemies are curbed by superior force, the senses can similarly be curbed, not by any human endeavor, but only by keeping them engaged in the service of the Lord. One who has understood this, that only by Krishna consciousness is one really established in intelligence, and that one should practice this art under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, is called sadhaka, or a suitable candidate for liberation.
Yeah, thank you. And here it's mentioned something from Krishna Chakravarti, his commentary here, that Mahabaho, this word is used here, Mahabaho. So, in other words, Mahabaho is like a great warrior who can subdue the enemies. So Krishna calls Arjuna here Mahabaho. So now the real battle now, Arjuna, is for you to subdue your mind. Okay, so you are a great warrior. Tasmat Isham. So in other words, Krishna's taunting Arjuna a bit here. Mahabaho, oh great warrior who can subdue your enemy. Now subdue your senses. This is then you'll be known as a great warrior. Yeah. Then you'll be a candidate for, a candidate for liberation. Yeah. Any questions or comments on this here?
Can I ask something? But then we are taught that we are not looking for liberation.
Good point. Yeah.
We talked about it yesterday.
Yeah.
Don't look for the liberation. We just look for devotional service.
Yeah,
So
let's just
then
read it.
liberation. So what is liberation then? Liberation of desires or liberation of
Well,
liberation?
well, these instructions that we hear in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, these are instructions on yogic principles of controlling the mind. Although, as we read yesterday, Krishna introduces the concept of meditating upon him, which actually means bhakti. But the instructions other than that can also be applied to the jnani, the yogi, to restrain the senses, to concentrate the mind, etc. So in that context, they also, by following these instructions, they can obtain their specific liberation from material bondage or from the influence of the modes of nature. But as Madhu Mangal Prabhu intelligently brought out, devotees are not interested in moksha. Yeah. So in the context of a devotee, this candidate for liberation, it means a candidate for going back to Godhead. That's how we should understand it. Yeah. So by practicing fixing our mind upon Krishna, engaging our senses in Krishna's service, then we can obtain liberation. And liberation for a bhakta, as we know, is to obtain Krishna's divine service in the spiritual world. Yeah. Did that help, Madhu Mangal?
Yeah, in the same time I was thinking about liberation. You get liberated by the desires inside yourself. So then you can meditate more on the Lord and serve him. Then
Yeah.
you don't have any of desires, and then you have pure devotional service.
Yeah, that's the idea, is that we purify our desire, or we transform desire. And we want, as we mentioned yesterday as well, the day before, we want to please Krishna. Yeah. So transformation of desire, not suspension of desire in the complete sense of the term. It may be in the beginning stages, we suspend the desires which we've been desiring for a long time, but then we develop other types of desires in order to serve and please Krishna. So that's liberation. Yeah.
Can I just ask you, or
Yeah.
can I clarify my thinking? So these instructions are for jnanis, karmis, bhaktas, right?
Well, if you read yogic texts and if you read their path of jnana, you can apply these. These are general teachings for the transcendentalist. Yeah, even for the jnani.
But what, at the end, it comes to bhakti yoga is the best. So then for devotees, you take the higher understanding that we don't want liberation, we want to just go back home.
Yeah.
Whereas the karmis or jnanics would think of liberation.
Yeah.
Is that what you're trying to, what that's teaching us? Or showing us?
Well, see, Bhagavad Gita, it's like there is it's a thread of conversation that Krishna brings Arjuna to complete Sharanagati.
Yeah.
He brings him to complete surrender, and also he entices the jnanis and the yogis as well to become bhaktas. But he speaks in such a way to attract them. So he speaks in their language.
Yep.
But he mentions, as we mentioned, for instance, whenever Krishna mentions about meditating upon him, that means bhakti. And I think
So
the first time Krishna brings himself into the equation of Arjuna meditating upon him, that is bhakti. So Krishna will gradually bring one, as we know, the 18th chapter, text 66, 1866, and at the end of chapter 6 as well, Yoginam Apishave Makatenda Atmana Shadavam Bhatate Yomam Yomi Attamo Mataha. That the highest yogi is the one who takes shelter of him. But Krishna is bringing everyone along the path towards bhakti. Yeah. He's attracting everyone. So that's why Krishna is speaking in this type of terminology. Yeah. But that's why Prabhupada's purports are very important, because Prabhupada shows us the thread of bhakti. And Prabhupada gives his translations of the verses and the word to word, often in contradiction to the actual Sanskrit translation.
Yeah.
Actually, and he describes it in a Krishna conscious way. I think I mentioned before, there's this book by Shiva Ram Swami called Surrender Unto Me, where he gives all the arguments of the scholars who criticize Prabhupada's translation of the Bhagavad Gita. For instance, there's, I can't remember exactly word to word, but just paraphrasing it, there's a one scholar who says, here we can clearly see that the Sanskrit word means this and means that and means this, and it clearly means jnana, it clearly means karma, but somehow or another, Bhaktivedanta Swami sees bhakti everywhere in the Bhagavad Gita. So in other words, Prabhupada's purports is helping us to remind us that Bhagavad Gita is not about Gyan, it's not about karma, it's about bhakti. And Prabhupada brings us, so for instance, this verse here, there is no mention of Krishna, there's no mention of Krishna consciousness. But Prabhupada says in the purport that one who's understood this, that only by Krishna consciousness is one really established in intelligence, and it should practice the art. And it doesn't mention that in the verse. It just say to restrain their senses from the objects. But Prabhupada reminds us that one who's understood this, that only by Krishna consciousness is one really established in intelligence. It doesn't say that in the verse, nor in the previous verses. But Prabhupada is helping us to understand Krishna's ultimate conclusion, that it's bhakti. And the only thing in Bhagavad Gita, actually, from one perspective, is bhakti. Yes, that's right. It's very, very intriguing. Yeah, Mother Mangapu, you had something.
Important to read it, because actually the recipe, it is in Bhagavad Gita, and it takes you step by step, and it says the candidate can get liberation, but then from liberation he realized, actually I don't want liberation, I want to serve, because the more I will serve, the more I am realizing myself as who I am.
Yeah, that's Krishna conscious education. What is liberation?
Tricking you. It's like tricking you in the beginning of giving you this nice fruits, but then you realize that actually is not what I want, is not what I'm looking for. What I was always looking for, Krishna tries to make me aware and bring me to the position where I will understand that actually is bhakti.
Yeah, and that's the voice of a devotee, and that's where Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, as it is very expert in bringing, and very expert, and the proof itself speaks, or it speaks for itself, how Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, as it is, made thousands and is continuing to make, to bring many persons to the process of bhakti. That's Prabhupada's mercy. All right. So let's pause there for today. It's 7:02. Very nice. We got through 2 or 3 verses, nice discussions and questions. I hope it was of interest to devotees here with us with us this evening. Hare Krishna. So,
because normally we just read it. This is, I was reading a word where Prabhupada said that, Prabhupada said his book should be read and scrutinizingly.
yeah, that's why it's so nice to discuss together.
Yes,
Isn't it?
Yes.
Get to hear like these points.
Spending, it's really
This point that Mother Jambavati brought up was very valuable in answer to Madhu Mangal's question as well. Very valuable. So that's what Krishna consciousness, that pleases Krishna very much, you know. We discuss his words and the application like that. All right, let's pause there for today. And where are we? We're on Wednesday. So tomorrow we're on again, we're going to be going into Brihat Bhagavatamrita. And quite exciting. I think if I remember rightly, we left off there where did we leave off? Brihat Bhagavatamrita, where Gopakumar, anyone can remember where we left off 2 months ago, last year?
Gopakumar went in the forest and he heard like chanting the holy name.
Yeah, that's it. And he meets anyway, let's not speculate. Let's find out tomorrow where we left off.
Are you going to join us on Friday?
No, I won't be able to go on Friday. Sorry, I won't be able to do.
That's right.
I can definitely do tomorrow. Okay, thank you everyone for your joining us this evening.
Thank you, Murli Prabhu.
Keeping
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Murli Prabhu. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare